Do you ever feel stuck, like you're living your life on autopilot? Are you ready to shift into high gear and reach the success you so richly deserve? Welcome to the Play Big Movement podcast. I am your host, Sharon Lechter, entrepreneur, business strategist, and best-selling author. Playing big is not about settling for good enough or being comfortable. It is about reaching your highest potential and achieving your greatest success. Join me in my Play Big movement as I interview top experts in business, money, and entrepreneurship, all ready to serve you and to help you play big, be number one in your field, live your legacy, and create maximum impact. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Lechter. And I'm excited today with my guest. Brian Walsh is somebody that I did not know before 2020, and out of this pandemic, sometimes we find positive results. And one of them was being invited to speak at the Real Success Summit. And Brian is the creator and the brain behind it, as well as a fantastic team we've enjoyed working with all year. Brian, thanks for being with me today.
Well, it's a pleasure, Sharon.
So let's try. You're leading authority on entrepreneurship and human behavior, and he's the founder of The Real Entrepreneur, and it's a private research and education organization. But he noticed the change in dynamics, live events being canceled. And as I've shared many times, instead of pivoting, he says, I'm going to adapt and adopt. So he adapted. How can I continue delivering what needs to be delivered given the new realities? And he's a self-made millionaire with a multi-million-dollar business, and he has influenced millions of entrepreneurs, and now his events reach over 140 countries. And I'm honored to know you, Brian, because this was a new relationship that we developed this year. And in fact, we just had an event last weekend, and it's just wonderful opportunity for me to reach new audiences and to support what you're doing with providing information for entrepreneurs. So thanks so much for being with me today.
Pleasure.
So I like to start by asking, little Brian, tell us a little bit about the Brian before you became the head of Real Success and Real Entrepreneurs, and how did you get here?
I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I say family entrepreneurs. My father was like a competent entrepreneur. I always saw him working. He, of course, taught me how to be addicted to hard work, regardless of whether you get a result or not, as parents often inevitably do. He started, I think, 62 different businesses. He listed 3 of them. He made a personal fortune 3 times, meaning enough to retire, and successfully lost them all 3 times. And I think that I had a lot of adversity from a personal perspective. My mother was a severe alcoholic, and I was struggling with a lot of things as a child. And my dad wasn't very close to me, but he supported us. So I sort of looked at him and I thought, he's somebody I admired, even though from an emotional connection point of view, not so much. But it was an interesting relationship, to say the least. But I think this is what spurred me on to wanting to be an entrepreneur. And back in those days, there was compulsory military service. So I was actually one of the last intakes as the whole thing was changing in South Africa. And I did just under 2 years in the Air Force. And during that, I started a music studio, like a rehearsal studio in Cape Town, where I was growing up. And my dad actually helped fund that and stuff like that. So he was always very supportive from the entrepreneurial side. But I saw him succeed and fail and succeed and fail. I think inadvertently, that's where I sort of thought, I want to help entrepreneurs. We always say we want to help because we want to help ourselves first. In other words, I want to figure out how to do this right. And then, if I can so do it, I can teach it to others. And that's where the journey kind of started. I mean, I've also had numerous businesses, digital media companies, publishing companies, music companies, but I mean, none of them worked. I'm like the classic. I started, 12 or 13 companies before I was 40. And they were all just survival companies, hardly paid the bills. Lifestyle went up a little bit, but the same amount of struggle and challenge. I really did not, I think I was teaching how to do it properly for quite a while before I actually got it right myself. So that was, it was a big journey per se, but the love for personal development as well as the business and entrepreneurial development, I think was there all along. And it's often, like we said, driven from our own need, not purely from a basis of contribution. People like to think it's altruistic to be a teacher. It's as much about us as it is about what we share with other people.
Well, you said something that I think, it just really hit home with me, because I think it's the same thing for me. Your parents taught you to be dedicated to hard work. And I think definitely I had that same training. My father was military. So, but it was the same, if you need to work hard, whatever you do, you put 150% into it. And so that's what I think helps us persevere through those downtimes. Do you think?
Yeah, and I think, but of course, in entrepreneurship, I mean, there's always hard work. So anyone listening, let's not play the games about, all these fantasies of sitting around doing nothing. There is an incredible outcome if you get it right, where you don't have to work. You could get to do what you love almost all the time, and you get a team of people doing it around you, doing everything else. And that's a privilege. And ultimately, as an entrepreneur, you should always try and get yourself out of the business. It should always become independent of you as much as possible. But I think the key thing is, there's no shortcut to the hard work. The problem is the addiction to hard work. So I noticed myself, and we did a lot of studies around productivity with this, is like, I would just make work. I'm an innovative person, so I would just create things. I was always busy, and then I'd look at my list and half the time and go, who put this stuff on the list? No one even knows about it. I just put it on, and now I'm keeping myself busy and I don't even know what I'm doing. And inevitably, obviously, not finishing things completely, moving on to other things because of that kind of fast, intuitive mind, which a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in. So for me, it was a huge undertaking and a skill to really learn how to take control of that. How to not be overly spontaneous, how to see things through, how to build a team of people around me that would follow things through. I mean, I literally created my own disciplines. Like I have a rule that says if I come up with an idea, I'm not allowed to tell anyone about it for 7 days. And so if I go to my team and I contact Sally and I say, I've got this great idea, she says 7 days. They just say 7 days. And I go, okay, I'll talk to you in 3 days' time. Because I will normally talk myself out of it, or realize we don't have the resources, or find a place, or make a sense. And the second rule is, once I've introduced it, I have to put it on paper before they have to. It doesn't exist to them until it's on paper with a small plan. So there's a lot. I think entrepreneurship is very much about the individual, and for a lot of us, we have to learn various types of self-disciplines to actually use ourselves in the best way to produce results with it.
I love that, Brian. And I know Angela is listening and taking notes. I think I'm going to end up hearing about a 7-day rule. I think we might be instituting that here as well. I love it. I come in with a new idea and it's like, does this change our priorities we set yesterday? Kind of goes along with the territory, but having the right team is absolutely an important ingredient. And so before we did the interview off camera, something I did not know, and I think that, for people looking at, it's always easy for you to say when I'm interviewing people, but you actually not only had your live events canceled because of the virus, you ended up finding yourself transplanted to Cape Cod, in South Africa because of the virus, and got locked down for 9 months, right? So then you had to pivot, all right? Then you had to adapt and adopt to create a business from a whole new geographic location. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, we had an events company, and then Real Entrepreneur, which was the coaching. I also did events, but that was specific to entrepreneurs. The events company was more open market. And so, and we did, like I said to you before, we didn't have a great 2019. So there was a lot of things that we were reflecting on. And then, it came into January, February, we did our normal things and we did our strategies and all this kind of stuff. But I must say I was in a challenging space as to how we were going to turn things around. And then, I actually came on my birthday, which is 22nd of March. I drove from Johannesburg, where I was living, down to Cape Town, which is where I originally actually come from. And it's because my dad was 83 and we now saw COVID, it hit South Africa, and I was a little bit concerned. I guess I always say that, but I guess it's also because my girlfriend lives down here and I wanted to be closer to her as well. But the thing is that we arrived on the 22nd, literally the night of my birthday. We drove down solidly. It's about 1,400 kilometers, about 1,000 miles. And then I think it was 4 days later, they announced the lockdown in South Africa. So, I got to know my landlord because I was in an Airbnb. I literally booked an Airbnb for a week. And anyway, I got to know David really well. We became good friends actually because I ended up staying in his Airbnb for almost about 7-8 months. And it was in that space. Yeah, I actually took it as a sign in a way when we came up with these ideas to do summits online, like I said to you, with no intention of actually making money, we were just like, well, the world's going to go to, you know what, and but our highest value is to connect. So let's just connect. I mean, we're petrified. Everyone must be petrified. We don't know what's going to happen. And so we set up our first summit, like off the cuff without any budget or anything, and got hold of all the speakers at the time we knew, which was about 30 of them, mostly South African, but a number from overseas as well. And we did the summit. And like I said, we realized people were struggling with the summit. They were struggling in the industry because they had all lost their revenue. Some of them were corporate speakers. Some of them, they'd lost. I mean, many of them were stage speakers, and now they couldn't speak in front of people. So we said, well, I tell you what, you guys can sell ebooks, nothing over $20. It must be low cost products and stuff like that. And like I said, we had this huge audience, and we made $100,000 in revenue, which was like completely left field to us. And it opened this whole new door. The truth is, and this is something that's so important, Sharon, I'd made the intention many years before that I wanted to be an online business. One of my highest values is to travel. I want to be able to work from anywhere in the world. The thing of doing physical events is a pain in the butt. It's expensive. It's challenging. You got to be somewhere specific. So the irony is that when we look back now at how much we changed the business and how successful we made it in the middle of one of the most challenging times in the world, we realized that, we like to say it was in the moment, but the truth is the intentions were actually set years before. And the moment, the circumstance gave us the opportunity. I actually said to my partner, I don't think we would have shifted, because it's so hard to completely let go of something and do something different. If it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't have shifted to become a completely online business and mastered this whole game of doing global summits with 130 countries participating. So it's so funny in a way, but there's so much truth in following the flow. And if you're doing what you love and it's important, you've got to listen to the universe. You've got to actually take the messages that you're getting in, because I cannot believe how much we changed from businesses that we actually needed to shut down, one of them because they were really not doing well, to creating a business that in less than a year was doing multiple millions of dollars in turnover. It's a blessing, but it's like everyone says, your overnight success took 10 years to achieve.
Sure, absolutely.
There's no such thing as overnight success. Yeah.
People keep saying, how did you convert to online? And well, it was about 2.5 years ago. I said, I'm traveling 80% of the time. We need to, I brought in a team to say, we need to, expand my online presence and have some online offerings. So we started creating these programs, and it was as if I knew this was happening, but I didn't. But it's like when the world shut down in March, I had all these online offerings ready to go, and we had started doing some webinars and things. And so it was, a gift, I think, to be prepared and start shifting and be able to be as effective, and actually more effective because you can reach more people. Certainly when I was on your Real Success Summit last week, we had over 3,000 people on. So it was amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. So we were actually we were broadcasting our live events, like I said, to, up to 12, 15 countries at a time. So we had like a full camera setup and we'd broadcast. And we had kind of pioneered that in a way. And we're telling a lot of our international partners, you should consider doing this, because we actually found we could, sell programs to the guys in other countries and stuff. Never to the full extent, but but it was there, and they were all no. And there's there's so many people, so many speakers that did not want to do anything online. They just want to be on stage. They prefer the way it is, and then they got thrown against the wall. I mean, I was phoning so many people saying, "Okay, John, John DiMartini, clearly now you have to." Right? He was like, because John just wants to be in front of people and physical energy, and I was speaking to so many people and seeing them transform. And the way somebody like John could take a breakthrough experience, which is a very personal in-room experience, and turn it into an online experience and actually get it to work. Or Brandon Bays did the same with The Journey, which again is a very personal in-room experience, because we had to. So it just shows how ironic it is. When you have to, you will. When you don't have to, you'll kind of mess around. And I mean, Sharon, the audience online, 10 times, because people were stuck at home. People had never used Zoom before. They were never used to communicating in this way. So not only did we get the privilege, you and I, because we were already experimenting and doing stuff with it, but we ended up with an audience that was 10 times what it was in order to penetrate. So it's a massive transition. They say, business travel will actually subside because of the fact that so many businesses realize they don't need to fly from place to place and have things happen. And so it's beautiful to be part of a transition, sad on the back of, a very serious pandemic, but this is the way it is. I mean, I said to people recently, it's your ability to adapt now based on how it is now. That's what you got to do. Don't worry about what's going to happen later. If you can adapt now and make it work now, I promise you're going to be good going forward. And I think that's the impact that we've got to let people know.
Well, and Les Brown, if I had this conversation, he says, I don't ever want to leave the house again. I'm loving this. And so, it is true. You miss that live experience of being able to read and feel the energy of the audience. There's no doubt about that. But, there's a benefit to being able to see the chat. And a lot of times I don't look at it till afterwards because I'm concentrating on my delivery. But to be able to see that instantaneous response from people as you're speaking is really, you don't get that in a live audience unless they come up and speak to you afterwards. So there's a trade-off. And as you said, we have to do what we need to do. And yes, the speaking fees kind of left the room, but yet you have the opportunity to access and reach so many more people in an arena that gives you instant feedback. I mean, I'm getting a little attached to my chair here. I've been living in it for 9 months, but it's amazing. For instance, on Saturday, I was on your event all over the world. And earlier that morning at 5 a.m., I was on another event for 1,000 people all over the world. And it's like, I couldn't have been in UK and then been in South Africa the same day. So it gave me the opportunity to reach more people. So it was very special.
And we know that's the ultimate goal. Like, as all teachers, but especially those that have been around for a while, like the deep fulfillment goal is to impact as many people as possible. So whatever drives that need, and I've still got many speakers who, talk about stages, but they're all starting to accept, okay, it's going to be another year before we get big rooms full of people at least. And many of them, I mean, it's like, even Tony Robbins, we saw him have to transfer. I mean, and that was also exceptionally challenging for him. But in classic Tony fashion, he did it large scale. But I think the key thing is that it's opened a new dynamic. I think we learn to respect our personal time, or we learn to respect the connective time we have more. One thing I think about us as a species and the way the world has come is we've become we've become in a crazy space, and we're not caring enough, because we're trying to catch up with everything. And this is not true for everyone, but it was for me, and it is for a lot of people around us, this was an incredible time to self-reflect as well. It was an incredible time to actually say, who am I? What do I want to do? And then on the back of that, to be able to connect with people. It also humbled people. So you didn't get one country coming in thinking they know more than another country. To think that we can have teachers anywhere in the world, and the teaching, people from anywhere in the world, from all the lowest of the third world to the highest of the first world. I think that was also a blessing, because, teaching is universal. So it's been an incredible experience. And in terms of our objective and our goal, it just accelerated that ability to connect with so many more people. So I love traveling, but I'd rather travel for leisure.
Yes, yes. Kind of it's nice to know you can, your closets look a little different these days. Don't need nearly as many clothes for stage appearances as I used to. So it's an amazing time. So I've heard that you have 3 secrets to success in the notes that was sent to me. So share us what your 3 secrets to success are, Brian.
So these are, there's 3 critical secrets. They're very universal per se, but they're extremely personal to me in terms of switching my life around. And so the first one is continuous educational self-improvement. So we know, there were studies done and books written on the fact that many of the wealthiest people, I think it was 86% of the wealthiest people, believed in lifelong educational self-improvement. And I've had the privilege of spending time with many incredibly wealthy people, even a billionaire, a guy called Eric. He died a while back, but he was worth $3.4 billion. I remember when I met him, like a friend of mine set up this interview with him, which was quite intimidating, because I was definitely not, I was way off that chart. And I remember him coming up on Skype in those days. And he, and I said, hi. And he said, hi. He said, Brian, I know you want to ask me a bunch of questions, but can I have 20 minutes of your time to ask you some questions? My crazy ego mind even said, I hope it's not about money. Like, this guy's worth $3.2 or $3.4 billion. I don't think he needs much advice on money, and he's retired. But it was so humbling, because, you're intimidated by his success financially. You find out then actually that there's other areas of his life that he struggled with. And he was fascinated by our industry and what was happening. And he took the opportunity. He didn't say 5 minutes and then take 20 minutes. He said 20 minutes and took 15 or whatever. And I've had this experience over and over again. And, you know, it's still fascinating that there's such a big chunk of the population who doesn't believe in continuous education at all. They think when they finish university or finish school, that's it. We've got a lot of work to do to get them onto that journey. But it's amazing how the majority of successful people, you know, walk that journey. So I think Dr. DeMartini actually said to me, he said, Brian, the people that need it the most do it the least, and the people that need it the least do it the most. And so that was a big part of my journey, and not just learning intellectually, because I proved that doesn't actually do anything, just makes your ego bigger, but actually implementing. So learning to do and doing that continuously. And you don't need new stuff all the time. You need to hear the same stuff over and over again until you get it right. So that was a big factor for me. The second thing was was raising your standards, as the Tony Robbins, I now call it intention, setting high intentions, which was really, you know, working on the mind to elevate what it accepted, because we tend to settle for what we have. And, you know, we always say that's your standards. If you look at your life, that's your standards, because you've settled for it. You know, you might want lots of things, but you're not moving because you've actually settled. The comfort zone, which is not that comfortable, is easier than moving. So I think everyone has that big personal journey to constantly raise standards, to push the boundaries of what they can achieve, from personal things, from health, from relationships, to lifestyles, to your business, to everything that you're doing. And so that was a very important one. And for me, education is one of the greatest tools for that. So I spent a lot of time with people that work on very systematic, you know, shifts inside you. And I go back. I work with Tony. I work with Robin Banks. I work with John DeMartini. I work with a number of teachers. And I go back and over again, because my life contextually changes, and then there's something new that comes out of it. And I just keep wanting to make myself, you know, believe at a real deep level and at a subconscious level that I can do so much more. So we know consciously we can. But at a subconscious level, of course, we've got a lot of conditioning to work on. So that raising standards kind of encompasses that personal growth journey. And then the last one, which is probably one of the most profound, was the being true to yourself, or being authentic. And this was on the back of Dr. DeMartini's work around values, and identifying what was truly most important and living in congruence with what was most important to you, not to anyone else. And that, to me, it felt like life was beating me down for my first 40 years. It just felt like no matter what I tried, I ended up on the floor. And I'm a very persistent and very overly optimistic person. But I mean, in real terms, if you looked at it historically, you'd think, oh my goodness, just give up now. It's never going to work. It was challenging. I mean, I had some really challenging emotional experiences about it, because it felt like I wasn't going to get the opportunity. Of course, it was all coming from within me anyway. But when I'd known John for years, and when he spoke about the importance of values and how the law of attraction actually rewards people that live congruently to who they are, I heard it many times, but didn't really hear it until one day I figured that out. And, you know, knowing my values of connection, learning, and travel, and building an entire business, an entire life, an entire lifestyle around connection, learning, and travel has literally made my life miraculous. And I think this is the context. You know, so no one of these things will necessarily do it by itself, but the combination, and, you know, we like to say that you are the best version of yourself. The natural, authentic you is the best version you will ever be of yourself. So stop comparing ourselves to others, work on you compare yourself to yourself, see if you're progressing, can you produce better results? And those three things, and Sharon, I'm not going to lie, for me, it took a long time. You know, I don't think I'm a great example of fast change. But because I got into personal development at 26, and it was only at 42 that I finally realized that intellectual, you know, education wasn't going to get me anywhere, and I had to change the way and become humble and change my approach to life. But I don't care how long it takes, because, you know, a lot of people can get there a lot faster. But those three things, you know, continuous educational self-improvement, raising your standards, and being true to yourself, or being authentic, have served me in ways I can't actually even explain.
I love it. And everything you do is appropriate in supporting those three steps. The people that you host on your events, all high caliber. I'm honored to be part of that as well. So I love it. How can people find out more information about Real Entrepreneur and the Real Summit Life Summits?
So realsummits.com will normally take you to the latest summit that's there. And Real Success Network is actually the name of the company. So I think Real Success Net is a handle name that you'll find on most social medias for us. But yeah, I mean, realsummits.com is really nice, because that will always go to the latest summit that's coming up. So it's always nice. We're doing one every month. It's quite an undertaking. And we have a summit happening every month for the whole year. with, incredible speakers, incredible teachers. And yeah, we love it. The world's a big place. Before we were focusing on a population of 50 million in total, which is obviously a much small percentage of that. And now we're focusing on a global population. We had 128 countries in the first day of the last summit. And so we're blessed in that way. We're trying to cross barriers. We've got people learning English very quickly, I think, around the world. I'm sure we're going to figure out a way to hold people from other languages soon in that space. But so realsummits.com is always the best to see the latest summits, and then Real Success Network. If you Google that, you should find.
Well, and I can highly recommend it to everybody watching and listening, because having participated, I also participated as a student, and got some fantastic people that they brought together in a way that brings great value. And I just love those 3 steps, continuous education, raising your standards, and being authentically you. I couldn't agree more. So Brian, thank you so much. You're going to hang in here with me and do a short video for the Play Big Movement private Facebook groups. For those of you watching and listening, rewind and take notes. Lots of golden nuggets here with Brian, and make sure that you join our Facebook group so you can hear the rest of the story. So Brian, thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure.
And for all of you watching and listening, remember to play big. It's called Be Number One in Your Field, Live Your Legacy, and Create Maximum Impact. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Lechter. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. Please subscribe to iTunes and leave us a review, as well as join us in other areas of social media, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Sharon Lechter, and for Facebook, author Sharon Lechter. Thank you so much and have a fabulous day.